Zion base. Yeah. 5 lines from the bottom. See, it says, there's only a problem. Because we had a principle last night. The principle last night, although we proposed, actually it's more of a proposal than a definite principle, is that where at a cloud prat to cloud, wherever there's a vav in the prat, it's not a prat. It rather becomes it disrupts it. In other words, it becomes riboy miut and riboy. Okay, even those who hold that cloud prat to cloud, which is the V'darish entire term cloud prat to cloud, Rabbi Shmuel holds that a vav undermines that. Okay, that was the principle proposal last night. And we did that with Avodah Zorah. Now, so we're going to do this with another drush about Avodah Zorah, and we're going to see if it works out. See if it says he's going to go and worship other gods, and bow down to them, and to the sun or to the moon. Okay, so there's a vod here, right? You see the Shemesh of Le'areach. Later on, the Meicha Mayim brings down, it's not here explicitly in the Gemara, it says, subsequently it says, Ol Chol Tzvar Shamayim, or it's all the heavenly hosts. So it's a cloud, prat to cloud. Elohim Acharim is a cloud. V'Lashemesh Ol Erech should be a prat. And then there's another cloud, Ol Chol Tzvar Shamayim. Okay? So, the problem is, it sounds like, if you take the cloud, prat to cloud. Actually, your question is, if you take the cloud, prat to cloud, it's a prat. Because that would mean that, what are you forbidden to worship? Only things that are prat. So it means only sun and moon and stuff like that would be not allowed to worship. But anything else sounds like you'd be allowed to worship, right? So that would be heter for Avodah Zarah. So as like here too, we break out of the cloud prat to cloud by using the vav. On Rabbi Zia, l'shemesh ein ksiv kan ela vila shemesh, ein kan cloud prat ela ribuyim. That makes it, again, even according to Rabbi Shmuel, it's not a cloud prat to cloud where we would say it's only forbidden then to worship Avodah Zarah, which is Kena Prat, rather it's a ribui, miut, and ribui. Now the thing is like this, it bothers me, the Aruch HaShulchan in the Meicha Mayim, he kind of glanced over this, but a ribui, miut, and ribui were might one thing, right? That means it's something which is not included. The miut is might one specific thing. So he doesn't say this, but I assume it's might HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, all these things they're not allowed to worship means everything you're not allowed to worship, except one thing only allowed to worship. What's that? Hashem. So it would be a ribui, it's a ribui. Again, you've quoted Rabbi Shmuel, where there's a vav in the prat, it turns from a cloud prat to cloud to a ribui, it's ribui. Now we have a difficult one. Now, another difficult pasuk. See, what do we do with this following pasuk? I skipped the last line on Lam Zayin base. Hey, sorry, Barzimna, Kumi Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Zira asks for Rabbi Zira. Vaksiv, doesn't it say, Kol Asher Lo Snapir V'Kaskeses. Now, the Meicha Mayim here also says, what's the cloud, prat to cloud here? It says, Kol Asher Ein Lo Snapir V'Kaskeses by Mayim, by Amim Van Cholim, Osom Tel Chelu. And it says Mayim twice. I don't remember exactly how the Pesukim work out. He brings it down here in the Pei Moshe. You see right at the top. It says Tochlim Kosher Mayim, Kosher Lo Snapir Kaskeses by Mayim, by Amim Van Cholim, Osom Tel Chelu, Kosher Ein Lo Snapir Kaskeses by Amim Van Cholim, Kosher It's Mayim, etc. Okay? Sheket Seim Lochem, etc. So the Mayim, it says Mayim twice. It actually says it 3 times. But it says Mayim at least twice. And that makes, those are the klolim. Right? And it says all fish have to have fins and scales. Then it says there's a prat by Amimu Ban Chalim in the seas and in the rivers. Right? So what does that prat do? So it says Me'ata Ein Kan Kal Prat. So it was a cloud prat. I mean, wherever you go, just like in the seas and rivers, it's got to have. If it's a prat, actually, there's a Gemara Chulim, which was not brought down here, or we're only alluding to, which says that if you have water in boros, sichin, and ma'oros, and it has creepy, crawly things that you don't have to check the water before you drink it, and even if it has little, bugs in it, you could drink the bugs. Okay, sea growth. I don't know exactly what it's. I don't remember exactly what it includes or what it doesn't include. So that's what I have in this cloud, prat to cloud. That when you need fins and scales in fish which are in the yamim and the cholim, in seas and rivers, but not in the bugs which are in water holes and such like. Okay, but the problem is that works if it's a cloud prat to cloud. But what if it's a ribui miut and ribui? What if it's not a generalization, specification, generalization, where you say any which is like the specification requires the quality of fins and scales, but it means everything requires fins and scales except for one possible exception, because that's how ribui mute the ribui works. Inclusion, exclusion, inclusion. So if that's the case, you're going to say every time there's a vav, that vav turns from cloud prat to cloud into ribui mute and ribui. How are we going to have that heter to drink water without checking to see that there aren't little creepy crawly things there, or that they have fins and scales? So says the Gemara, me'ata inkan cloud prat ribuim, right? El bekindig si vav. Is that because it says vav? Does that ruin our cloud prat to cloud? Amar said, wherever I found such a vav, I just erase it. Like, don't confuse me with the facts. Okay, it says vav, but we don't care. Now, that sounds dangerously heretical, right? Because it's basically taking a vav out of the Chumash. So Mechamayim explains. He says, this is not like a regular vav. It says, Bayamim uban cholim, in the seas and in the rivers. So what kind of a vav is this really? It's not a vav achibor. It's really it's in lieu of a or. It doesn't mean in the rivers and the seas. It means in the rivers or the seas. So this is not a true vav. A true vav is a vav achibor. This vav is in a secondary role. It's a either or vav, which is rare, but we do find it occasionally. Sometimes vav serves as an or. So there he says, when does the principle kick in that we change the cloud prat to cloud to ribui miut to ribui? Only when it's a vav achibur, but not when it's a vav which is an either or vav. Okay? It makes sense here also, especially because the first word of the phrase bayamim doesn't have a vav. It says kosher ein lo stop here b'keses by bayamim uvan cholim. Yet yamim is part of the prat. So if you wanted to, if the vav was breaking the prat out of the prat mold, making it into a miut, so it should be the vav should be on bayamim also. Okay? I'm trying to get that smirk off your face, and it's not almost work. Okay, so it says more. So he says, Shmuel bar Abduma. Shmuel bar Abduma says, I would have said, he wants to say that what's his name? Rabbi Shmuel bar Abduma, who quoting right now, wants to say that we make it a ribui miyutz and ribui, and in fact we include in the requirement of fins and scales, we include in fact large bodies of stationary water, meaning ponds and lakes. What is mimite? It's mimite wells, dugouts, caves, which is a different type. So he says the vav does break it out of a cloud prat to cloud. Well, nevertheless, the water which is in the wells, the pits, dugouts, and things like that, deep holes in the ground, that is precisely what we are mimayit in this ribui mitzvah and ribui. That's what we exclude from having fins and scales. What we don't exclude, which does require fins and scales, is ponds and lakes. Because Yami and the Cholim really doesn't include ponds and lakes. So that's why we have to be marba, we have to include them. We include them, we only exclude the deep holes in the ground. Okay?
So like natural bodies of water versus man-made.
No, it's not necessarily. It's not necessarily because they're all it's a well. A well can be it's a natural well. It's a collection of water in the ground. I don't know if that's the case, but there could be. So it says again.
I usually used to think some because it's a din sort of on the chesed. Now it's not even on the object. Now it's not that. It's really a din on space.
Right. But that's a Gemara Chulin. It is a Gemara. Well, some of these ones we tend not to remember. But it's in Gemara Chulin, Daf Samach Vav does say that. I didn't remember it, so I look it up today. But he said, yeah, it's there, honest. I'm not making it up. So, as a matter of fact, the Pnei Moshe, let's bring it down here. Okay, Maraponim, Pnei Moshe. So it says in Gemara, Ella, so again, I wish you were doing Isi Omer Masher B'Yami, you sorry. You mutarim. I might say that that which is in the gigios and biborim, that which is in the ponds and lakes are okay. Tamulomar, that's why it says that gigios, I think, is even is a pitcher actually, a basket. So that's even meant. I wasn't thinking about that, but gigios it's specifically excluding boros, sichid, and ma'oros. Because we see that even in a pitcher you have to check it. You only don't have to check when you're drinking directly out of the well. Okay? But in a pitcher you do have to check. So Talmud Lomar kosher ramayim riba. So that's why it says kosher ramayim, and that includes these as well. The only thing which excludes the result of the meat is the boros, sichir, and maros. Rabbi Shmuel said, this is a new issue. If you say to Avodah Zarah, you go up to a statue and you say, Eliato, you're my God. Machlokas Rabbi Chachamim, it should be Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim. So there's a machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim, and this is a question whether you need to have some sort of maisa in order to be considered to be Avodah Avodah Zarah, or even if you just go and verbally commit yourself to an Avodah Zarah. Now the next one is a little bit. It's not a little bit. It's a lot mishubash. So let's go down to the Gilyon Ephraim. All the way in the bottom, if you look at the little body page, Gilyon Ephraim, he sorts out the gears a little bit. It says, what if you bow down to an Avodah Zarah? It's an interesting issue. It's not a machlokas in the Bavli, to the best of my recollection at all. Bavli just takes it to a pasha. If you bow down to Avodah Zarah, right, it's prohibition. So it says, Rabbi Yochanan ain't a machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan says, it's not a machlokas. Everybody agrees that it's considered before Avodah Zarah. Divrei Hakol. The kfifa is koy mishu chayiv. Everybody agrees when you bend your frame down, you're considered to be chayiv for Avodah Zarah. Rish Lakish said, no, it's a machlokas. Rabbi Kiva holds you need a maisa, holds bowing down is not considered to be a maisa. Ma ben amalev amori kabaso, ma ben amalev amori tzivsoso. It's amazing because the same Rish Lakish says. It says, what's the difference between bowing down and going like this? If this is a maisa speaking, akimas vasayim, Bavli calls it, then then so is bowing down. If bowing down is not a maisa, then neither is moving your lips. So he says there should be no qualitative difference between the two. So Rabbi Kiva who patters you, I think it's right here, I think I have it backwards. Chachamim who patter you by, Chachamim who patter you from saying Eliata, but you're moving your lips, will also patter you from being mishtachadeh, because you're not doing anything. So, it's an amazing thing because it says, it says all over, don't bow down to him. But I guess it means a lav shem bo maisa. It doesn't actually have a deed attached to it.
Wasn't there something in the Bavli about that if you bent down to tie your shoes and it happened to be in front of an idol, that you might be over on Avodah Zarah?
No, not over Avodah Zarah. You might have to. No, that's one of Chana's kids gave her life on that, but not over Avodah Zarah on that. No.
You weren't supposed to do that. You're not supposed to bend down.
Not supposed to, but it's not a lav. It wouldn't be a lav. I mean, that would be the machlokas here. But they're not even bowing. The question is even more than that. Here, even if he's bowing down to Avodah Zarah, it might be lav shem bo maisa, it might not be chayiv misa. Okay? So according to this, whatever it says, and things like that, it means don't bow down, but you don't get the death penalty for it. It's only if you do something like sacrificing, a real maisa, not just this quasi maisa bowing down. It's an amazing concept, right? You would have thought Balabatish that there is a difference. That bowing down is not the same thing like speaking, but in what it says, Rish Lakish, that it is the same thing. Amr Abizir, continuing the Gilyon Ephraim. Abizir says, Masnisa Misael Rish Lakish. The brisa is a proof for Rish Lakish. It says, Torah Achasi Elochem Lo Sebishkoga. It says you should have one Torah for anybody who does Averis unintentionally. Ainli Elo Dover Shu Maisa. It means specifically so when you bring a korban, because you were shreiking and doing Avera, when you did a Maisa. Here the Shai Torah puts in the word Yotzu, which excludes Hamagadef Vamishtachave Sheina Maisa. That bowing down and blessing and bowing down are not a Maisa. word minayin is superfluous here. But, so it comes out quite this brisa that in fact, this, like Rish Lakish, that bowing down and speaking are not considered to be mites, and it wouldn't be chayiv a carbon in that situation. Now, of course, I assume we pass on like Rabbi Yechon, that it is a mice, but Rish Lakish's svara is take a fascinating svara. Okay? Now, giving this is a very weird avodah zarah. And this is time used to be they used to have some avodah zarah, the malach. I don't know exactly what it was, but then they used to the way they used to. There was a specific rite in this avodah zarah, which is to take your child and pull your child between two what? Molech, yeah. But pull your child. Either it's not too clear between flames or through flames. He doesn't die in the process. It's not killing him, right? You just walk your child through the fire. Okay, I guess some sort of fire god. Okay, so in order to be liable for this prohibition, you have to give it over to the priest of the molech, take him back, and bring him to conduct him through the fire. If you gave your son to the priest, but you didn't conduct him to the fire, have your conduct him to the fire, but you had not given him previously to the priest, and you're not liable. Unless you give the child over to the molech, and conduct him through the fire. Okay? Baal Ov. The next prohibition in the Torah, these are all skila prohibitions still. Baal Ov is zapitom. It's a kind of soothsayer. Or somebody who speaks out of his underarm. Okay? V'yidoni, we're going to speak about these guys more than more. V'yidoni, another prohibition Torah, that's somebody who speaks with his mouth. Also, it's all fortune tellers, soothsayers, spirit raisers, harei l'b'skila. Any of these people get stoned. V'anishavim, somebody who makes inquiries of the Baal of Onain and these people, so there Ba'azhara, he transgresses a prohibition. Of course, a lav shem bo ma'isa, right? You can't get any penalty for it, but it's a penalty, the penalty to ask them. Okay? Where's a warning not to give your child over to Molech? Says explicitly, don't give your child over to Molech. Christ, how you don't get curries if you did intentionally. Says you gave of your children to the Molech, you will be excised. How do we know that? Based and puts you to death. Most you must, he should be put to death. You should supposed to own by the nation of land. It says your children should give. Doesn't mean that even if you gave over to the priest, but you didn't conduct the child, are you liable? It says two elements, titain and la'avir. You have to give it to the priest and conduct it to the fire. What if you gave him over to the priest and you conducted him? But shalom l'molech. You did it not to Molech, you conducted him for some other avodah zarah. Are you liable? It's got to be specifically moilech. Okay? This is going to cause us some pain, not unpleasant pain, but some matter of discussion in a few moments. What if they didn't put on the fire? You know, you went through it without the fire. But no, you shouldn't have somebody who conducts his son and daughter through the fire. And Avra l'gzera shava. He has a gzera shava of Avra. That doesn't say Molech, and that pasuk in Vayim Yuches doesn't say Molech specifically. But it says Avra conducting through, it says Avra by Molech, Ma'avara shenem ala'am ba'esh, just like here it's through fire. Afkan, so too, anytime we're talking about Molech, ba'esh, it's through fire. And you say something, you come to the conclusion. You're not liable until you give over to the priest, and you conduct them to the fire, la molech, to the molech. Now, the Kilda 5 throws in here, and you can throw it in later too, but we'll throw it in here. He only is only chayav if he passes him, if he conducts him through in the normal fashion. Okay? What's normal? If you do a kilachar yad, you do you're potter. What? Walking backwards, but it's not just walking backwards. If he walks on his own, right? you must conduct your child through, right? And that means not to pick him up. You can't carry him through. You have to actually pull him or push him to go through, conducting him through. Okay, so it says on Rabbi Nassim Shemel says, "Lo nitzchayv achim serenu lekomorim." You got to give him over to the to the priest. V'yatilenu and v'yavirenu and pass him through. So it's got. I think he's stressing the order. Okay, now it says here oh, all right. I'll just read the way it is. It's not really necessary. What does it mean to pass him through the normal way? You have to pull him through. I don't know if you put a leash on him. I know exactly what you do, but you probably just take him by the hand. But you have to pull your son through. In other words, you have to conduct him through the molech fire. Okay? So it says in my time, you learn, Havio beraglo. If he passed him through by foot, potter, he's exempt. Now, in this case, the case is a person passes through the moilech without I'm stuttering, but what's important to know is that the raglo here is confusing, because the raglo in this sugi is going to appear in two different contexts. One view of raglo is potter, meaning that if he passes through on his own steam, he's not conducted, you're exempt. The other is, later on I'm going to say, also going to be Havir Baraglo is Chayev, meaning he must walk through in order to be Chayev. If you carry him through, then it's not considered to be the proper procedure, and you're potter. Okay, so sometimes in the sugya, Baraglo is a reason to be Mechayev, and sometimes Baraglo is a reason to exempt. So he's going to be Mechayev when you walk through as opposed to being carried through. So his exempt is when you go on your own power as opposed to somebody conducting you. Okay? So it gets a little bit confusing. So it says, Matanya Vir Baraglo, Potter, you're exempt. Okay? So it says the Gemara, that actually says the carbon Ada and Shaitar, so they throw in here, V'hu Shehevir Atzmo Potter. If you put yourself through, your Potter as well. Okay? Now it's not true if you have to change the gears here, you add this on, you just add it on. We say if the child walks through on his own, he's potter. And if the man himself walks through moilech, he's potter as well. Okay? He does it himself. So says the Gemara, and that, because Rabbi Lezer Shimon Mechayev. Rabbi Shimon says if a guy himself passes through moilech on his own, Rabbi Lezer Shimon holds his chayev for having gone through moilech. Yeah, it says in the Torah is mavir. We'll come back to that. But he himself is chayiv. Now, to Rabbanan hold, it doesn't matter if it's moilech or any other avodah zarah, right? As opposed to what we said on top. On the top of it, we said it's got to dafka be moilech. Here it's saying any other avodah zarah. Okay? We're going to come back to that later on, what precisely that means. It's only moilad, nothing else. Moli molech, sorry. Now, says Mar, you're also only liable on your children. Meaning not on anybody else. In other words, if you're mavir somebody other than your children to the moilech, you're potter, right? So say put your father, mother through. That's going to come up later on. You're exempt. Okay? Says time Rabbi Lezer Shimon. What's allowed to Rabbi Lezer Shimon? Who's mechayev somebody who's mechayev somebody if they go through on their own. What's the chiyuv? So he says. What's excuse me? It says there should not be found within you. So the becha is extra. Could just said loimotzei ma'avir b'no bito beish. Why it say loimotzei becha in you? Begufcha loimotzei ma'avir. In you yourself, there shouldn't be any passing through. So it means now is there a prohibition you passing through your kids, but also becha on you yourself there's a prohibition. Okay, Rabbanan argue. Rabbanan becha means within the Jewish nation. But Rav Shimon holds becha means within you, meaning in yourself. You can't yourself willfully pass through moilech. Okay? So it says the Gemara, it says I'll eradicate him, excise him from his midst. Because this is not to do with moilech specifically. Even though the pasuk is in the context of moilech, it means anybody who's over avodah zarah, he gets kares. Not necessarily moilech. Onesh minayin, getting back to moilech, how we know that onesh, there's death penalty by moilech. Nizar nasal moilech mos yumos, as he gives his children to moilech mos yumos. I'm sorry. That's how we. Sorry. That's how we know onesh by other avodah zarah, other moilech. Because by moilech we already had. It says Amor. It's Shem. It's Ish Mibnei Yisrael B'Geragera Garbi So Sheitim Yisrael Mos Yumos. So this additional time when it says Mos Yumos, it's going in other avodah zarahs other than moilech. Okay, it's like the classic drush of Im Eno Inyon. There's the second time it says kares and it says death penalty. By moilech, it's superfluous. It goes in other forms of avodah zarah. Now says the Gemara, quoting from the Brayso that we said before, V'hu she'evir atzmo, if he went himself. So we had a machlokas. Rabbanan said he's pater, right? It's got to be dafka your son and daughter. Rabbi Lezer, you're liable. So it says the Gemara, wait a minute. The little bit raglo uoiver, it's a question on Rabbanan. How come he's pater? This raglo should be chayev because he wasn't carried. He walked through, and walking through is the chiyuv. Why is he exempt? Says the Gemara, midnei shehevir atzmo, because he transported himself. Why? Because it's only if you actually are led through, conducted, that you're chayev. It's true. In all cases, in order to be chayev, you have to be walking. You have to be ambulatory. You can't be carried, but you must be conducted in order to be chayev. Meaning, it's obviously not the kid who's chayev. Right, the technicality. It's got to be conducted. It says ma'avir, right?
I have a philosophical question.
Wait. Give me a couple more minutes. So it says, let me just finish this passage. So it says, Ma'idam Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon. Well, if that's the case, what does Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon hold? Rabbi Shimon holds Ma'avi Atzmos Takechayev. So here, V'avir Baraglo Patur, isn't he going on his own speed, on his own steam? And here, the V'avir Baraglo is the reason to Patur. Why? Because he's walking, he's not being led, right? So the Gemara gives a fascinating answer, and I have to tell you, the way I'm learning right now, it's only me. Everybody else is different shortim. But it's amazing. But wait, I think I'm learning it correctly. And it's an amazing answer. It says, "Buhu de Aver Mizakar." You're only liable, according to Elazar Mishimon, if you jump through. Because if you jump, then it's as if you are leading yourself. In other words, walking, Taka's not going to be mechayev you on your own. If you walk your child through, you conduct your child through, you're chayev on that. If you walk through yourself, it's not, then you're not going to be part of chayev. It's only if you jump, because jumping is like conducting oneself. It's an amazing concept, but that's what it says here. He's got to jump through the, hop, skip, and a jump. He's got to jump through the molech. Yes?
Usually the Gemara is so concerned about Marasayan, about making you get there.
Yeah, that's the Rabbanan. This is strict Issa D'Oraisa.
So here they're looking for technicalities to get you off the hook.
That's right.
Why is that?
We'll see. The Torah itself indicated it. We'll see. Yes, we'll see. Not yet. In a few more minutes. Rabbi Mechia by Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Mechia is Rabbi Zira. Mosar v'lo havir. What if you only gave him over to the priest and didn't do the walkthrough? Do you transgress a lav or not? You don't get chiv misa, right? Because again, you have a technicality. But do you transgress a lav? It's a negative command. So it says, "Tiflukta rachiska Rabbi Yochanan." So machlokas chiska Rabbi Yochanan. These probably the machlokas. Almost everybody changes the gears here. Ganav v'lo mochar. The halach is if you kidnap a fellow Jew and you sell him, you're liable for the death penalty. The gonev ishum charov and imtzabi adom mosimos. So in fact, according to most the commentators, including Chazal, it says lo siknov and aseres adibros. It's going on kidnapping, not on regular theft, right? That's how we Jews are making one of thefts, right? So in any event, so the technically, right. So the halacha is that that's only if you only liable death penalty if you steal the kid or the adult for that matter and you sell him. Okay. What about if you stole and didn't sell? Is there at least a lav of lo signov, or is the lo signov sadibras only on when you stole the chiyuv misa of selling and of stealing and selling? So it says more. It's machlokas. Machlokas between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. To ganav v'lo machar, again the word tavach, almost anybody changes. Chizkiah marchayiv, Rabbi Yochanan mar pater. Chizkiah says liable, but Rabbi Yochanan says you're pater. So here it's the same thing. The same issue will apply over here. It says lo yimatzei b'cha mizarcha lo sitein la'avir l'moilach. So if you can divide up there the gneva from the mechira and say there's a specific prohibition on the gneva, even if you don't actually follow through on the mechira, here too you can divide and say there's a specific prohibition on the giving, even though you don't follow through on the conducting. Okay, if you can't divide up over there, you don't divide up over here as well. Oh, this case says more further. Rabbi Bachia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, "Re'ei lashon sheli maraticha." Says, watch this language I'm teaching you. Shalim techa, I'm sorry, shalim techa, shalim techa Torah that the Torah taught you. Moilech. Now here we had, so till then we have two opinions. So at the top of the page it said only Moilech. Then later on the page it said any avodah zarah. So Rabbi Yochanan is kind of like a kosav ashlishi. He comes to be machriya. He says you should know. In Moilech is any Moilech is kol shetamichor lecha. Moilech is not this. There was a specific avodah zarah called Molech. But besides that, if you take any avodah zarah or any inanimate object and say, do haste Moilech, right? Your name is Moilech, and then you transport your kid in front of that after giving it to the priest of that Moilech, so then you're liable. So it's got to be called Moilech, but it's not the specific avodah zarah which was called by the Welt, by everybody else Moilech, okay? It means rather kosh tamichelav, afilu kisam, even a stick, afilu tzor, even a stone, okay? And then it says, of course, Kores again is just tacked on. L'Rabba Shavar Zarah, of course, it means any avodah zarah gets Kores. Okay. Now, Rabbi Nassau B'Shem Elazar said, L'Rabba Shar Avodah Zarah L'Banim U'Lebanos. This comes to include when it says, V'Yichrat Yosam Mikerav Amo. It means an interesting thing. It says that if you take your sons and daughters and you pass them through the any other avodah zarah, so then you're liable as well for Ma'avil Moilech. Now, it's a question among the Mefarshim here: is he agreeing with Rabbi Yochanan or disagreeing with Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan said if you call anything Moilech, it works. So is he confirming that, or is he saying that that's the indication of that pasuk of Vikrati Yosam Mikerav Amo, or is he denying that? He's saying even if you didn't call the avodah zarah molech, by definition, this ceremony before in front of any avodah zarah makes you liable. Okay, it's not clear. I would like to learn the first way that he learns like Rabbi Yochanan that that you have to call the other avodah zarah molech, but you can call any other avodah zarah molech, and then you're liable for it. But there's an additional nuance, and this is the critical point. The Tanya we learn echad hamoilech ve'echad shar avodah zarah, molech or any other avodah zarah, which, if you learn like I just learned, you called molech. Bein she'ovda, but the other avodah zarahs, besides molech, bein she'ovda v'banim v'banos, bein she'ovda ba'avos u'mimahos chayav. By molech proper, only sons and daughters. by any other avodah zarah which you called moilech, even fathers and mothers. Because it doesn't matter who you took. If you took somebody through by any other avodah zarah except moilech proper, then you're chayev. Okay? By moilech proper, it's got to be dafka, sons and daughters. By the other avodah zarah, it's even fathers and mothers, which means, I think, anybody. Okay? Doesn't matter. Okay, by the way, if I recall correctly, none of this is in the Bibli. Says one, Rabbi Zera said, B'she'ein avodas l'chein. Now, I'm going to punctuate this the way I feel like punctuating it, which is not like anybody else does, but everybody else changes the Yersa left and right, and I have very few Yersa changes in the next onward. So Rabbi Zera said, B'she'ein avodas l'chein. When you chayav a moilech, what Rabbi Zera seems to be saying is that when you chayav a moilech for another avodah zarah, when that avodah zarah doesn't have the derech of moilech. So it's moilech, as remember I said, it's a specific avodah zarah. I know what it was exactly, but moilech is a specific avodah zarah, and its derech was the fire ceremony. What the Gemara Chumash is telling you is that. And Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Nasser telling you, if you do that ceremony for any other avodah zarah, you're liable as well, and even more liable because you're liable even for your father and mother, right? But says Rabbi Zera, we're talking about specifically when it's not the derech for that avodah zarah to do a fire ceremony. Says, I understand. The Gemara interjects. What do you mean? Does that mean that if the other avodah zarah had a fire ceremony of its own, and you did it, you're potter? You sound like you just said you're only liable for fire ceremonies for other avodah zarah, as if that's the derech of that avodah. If that's not the derech of that avodah zarah, how can that be? Sounds like if the derech is to do the fire ceremony for the other avodah zarah, it's more lenient and you're exempt. Says more no. Rabbi Hila. Rabbi Zera is really quoting Rabbi Hila. He was a Talmud Rabbi Hila. Rabbi Hila, afilu avodas l'chein chayiv shtayim. No, their afilu is a little bit difficult to deal with. It probably said im avodas l'chein originally, or something like that, or the word afilu is lav dafka. It means it's very simple though. It means if that avodah zarah has a fire ceremony, and you did fire ceremony to it, you're liable for two. You're liable for its own avodah zarah, and you're liable for molech as well. When Rabbi Zera says you're only liable for one korban, let's say the b'shoigeg, you're only liable for one korban if it's not darka b'kach. You took another avodah zarah, called it molech, and did a fire ceremony for it, then you're liable for only one prohibition. But if it's avodah b'kach, if it's a avodah zarah which has its own fire ceremony, so the halacha is any avodah zarah in the world which you're oived kedarka, you're like throwing a stone at markulis and defecating to por, you're liable for doing that avodah, right? So if you took another avodah zarah, called it moilech, and it had a fire ceremony to begin with, you're liable to one for its own avodah and the other for moilech. Okay? Masisim Rabbi Hila. But the brisa seems to be on the side of Rabbi Hila, and that there's a separate Yisur of Moilech, and there's Chayiv too, one for that Avodah Zarah and the other for Moilech. What's the brisa? It says, Moilech b'chlal oiv Avodah Zarah. Here's the answer to your question from before. Moilech is included in all other Avodah Zarah. The Torah singled it out. Why? It's not clear exactly, but the Torah singled it out. B'yotzo lidoin lo love. All other the Moilech could have been included in any other Avodah Zarah in the Torah. Why did the Torah to single out Moilech? Just say, poor. The Torah never says, don't do poor. We know, don't do poor. Say, Avodah Zarah. Never says, don't do marvelous. We know, don't do marvelous, Avodah Zarah. Why did the Torah single out Moilech? L'hakel. For a kula. Shelo yechayev ela yetzi yerecho. That by Moilech you're only liable for your own kids, not for anybody else, right? Your own progeny. So we see Moilech was singled out to be a unique prohibition of itself. And was singled out B'davka as a kula, as a leniency. So you ask me why we always look for leniencies of Moilech? I don't know what the theological reason is, but because the Torah singled it out for leniency. The Torah gave very precise parameters and narrow parameters for Moilech. So that's why we single out for leniency. Okay?
Now, all these other technicalities, you still chayav a lav, right?
Yeah, well, that was also machlokes, whether if you did part of it and not the other part, where there's a lav even.
So going into a church nowadays, why is that also? I mean, theoretically...
Not because of the lav avodah zarah. No. It's just because you have to stay away from avodah zarah. It's not the same lav of avodah zarah. It's no chiv kars or anything like that. It's a separate prohibition, okay? Which I think is going to come up later in Sanhedrin, actually. So in any event, so it says the Gemara, if now comes to avodah zarah. So in any event, it says the Gemara, so the royal is unique, and it's separate. So if you have another avodah zarah which has a fire ceremony, you could be liable to one for the avodah zarah itself, and one for moilech, which is a separate isser, which rides on top of any other isser of avodah zarah. Okay, says the Gemara. Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Shimon, Omer. Lozer Shimon says, "B'klal oif de avodah zarah haya." I'm sorry, skip. So, Amrei Tanchul Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Tanchul Rabbi Yirmiyah said, "Asid Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon Kashitas Rabbi Shimon Aviv." Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Shimon his father. Now, what did Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon say? Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon said, I forgot. He says they only liable for moilech done to moilech, fire ceremonies done to fire ceremonies, to the moilech god. Not that you can't take a rock called moilech and be chayev. Rabbi Yochanan said this only in Rabbanan, not in Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara says, you know what? He also can be fit into his father's shita, who we just quoted. It takes a little bit more doing, but the Gemara does it. Says the Gemara, "Shelo yechayev ela yetze yirechu." They only liable on your progeny. Okay, Rabbi Lezer Shimon, Rabbi Chlal oiv de avodah zarah. So to Rabbi Lezer Shimon, he takes that a step further. He says, "B'chlal of the moilech is included all of avodah zarah. Yatsa lidono love shelo yechayev el yetze yirechu." He has a kula that you're only liable for your progeny. And although the Gemara doesn't say explicitly, the other kula is that it's only molech, not any other avodah zarah. There's no chiyuv of molech unless you do molech. So he says, not Rabbi Yochanan said before, you can't take any other avodah zarah, call it molech and be chayiv. It's only to the molech god specifically. Okay. Yudan said, and it's really out of place here. It's not necessary to be here. It's really from, at least as far as I can tell, it's from Gemara saying where we had a blot ago last night. And here it's superfluous. Either Lezer Shimon says, Zibech kiter v'nisech. If you sacrifice, you slaughter an animal, sacrifice it, and libate, but in one period of forgetfulness, to avodah zarah, it all is one prohibition, the prohibition of serving another god. He concedes to that if you serve the other god in three different fashions, one is avodah zarah, one is his own personal avodah, like defecating to bore. The other one's kavod to do something to it, which like we do in the Beis Hamikdash, like bring ketores for it. And the third thing is about avodah yishtachavaya, you bow down to it. If it's according to Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, that Yishtachavoya is considered to be a Maisa. Shuchai v'kolachas v'achas. Those three categories give you three separate prohibitions, even in Pehelim Echad. Minay Shimavda ba'avodosa, ba'avodas kavoa, ba'avodas shtayvaya. How do you know that's the case? If you did all these three categories of avodah, one its own personal avodah, the other the same you do the base image, and the third the bowing down. Shuchai v'kolachas v'achas. So you liable each every one. The Shmuel Shemazir said, it says, do not sacrifice, which is the avodah base mikdash, to other gods, literally to demons. Amalei, so he said, no, that's not the good source, because Mate Tano Kachim, that is the Gemara elsewhere uses to derive the prohibition of shchutei chutz, of taking a true korban and sacrificing it outside the base of mikdash, which is considered as heinous as if you sacrifice the demons. But that has nothing to do with avodah zarah. So Rabbi Yasser Rabbi Yochanan tried a different pasuk. Zibech lo, he says that no, so Zivchem is a different approach. It's that story about Zibech lo tle echad ba'mum chayiv. It's going to tell you that even if you sacrifice an animal which is a ba'mum avodah zarah, which you can't do in the Beis HaMikdash, that you're liable. Because don't think because there was a technicality you get off the hook. The animal is a ba'mum, oh, poor avodah zarah, only got a ba'mum, you're off the hook of avodah zarah, no, you're liable in avodah zarah. So that's what. So we're talking about. Tells us that whatever you do in the Beis Hamikdash you can't do to foreign gods. My Kedon, what's the source? Gam Rabbi Hillel said, Lo sasu kein l'Hashem l'kechem, kol Hashem l'kechem lo sasu kein. Don't do, literally means don't do the same thing, break down altars of Hashem as you will do to the foreign gods when you enter the land of Israel. But Hidash said, don't do what you do to God to any other Avodah Zarah. In other words, things you're doing in the Beis Hamikdash, don't do to an Avodah Zarah, and that's a lav, an Avodah Gavoah done for an Avodah Zarah. Now, all that is really not relevant to our discussion. It's just brought down here really because Rabbi Huss, Rabbi Shimon appears, and Rabbi Hillel appears, and they appeared in our sugya as well. Now we get back to our issue. Okay? Rabbi Pinchas Rabbi Yossi, B'Shem Rav Chisda. Rabbi Pinchas said, name Rabbi Yossi, in front of Rabbi Yossi, name Rav Chisda, Hoysa avodosa bebanim ubevanos. If the avodah zara of this other, it's a fascinating thing he says, avodah zara of this other avodah zara, its avodah was to do a fire ceremony with sons and daughters. But you did it instead with fathers and mothers. Now that's its ceremony is to sons and daughters, but you do as fathers and mothers, you are chayav shtayim. You're liable to. You're liable A for that avodah zarah, and B for moilech, right? Why? Because Rabbi Nasser said on the bottom that the limitation which pertains to moilech of only sons and daughters is only by moilech. But in any other avodah zarah, you can be chayav for fathers and mothers as well. And if you called it moilech, you're liable for moilech for fathers and mothers by other avodah zarah. It's an amazing chiddush, but that's what Rabbi Nasser said earlier. Now, the thing is like this: the additional interesting point which he made is that even though the derech of that avodah zarah specifically do sons and daughters, if you even did fathers and mothers, that counts too. You know why? Because it has to be darka lekach, and darka is defined in an expanded sense. It doesn't mean the subject have to be the specific subjects which are normally used. It has to be done in the normal manner. And therefore, even though normally they only subject their sons and daughters to that avodah zarah, still, if you took your father and mother, you're still liable. Because that kula, that it's dafka sons and daughters, only applies to moilech proper. But once you get into any other avodah zarah, which has a fire ceremony, even if since it has a fire ceremony, it doesn't matter who you pass through, even your father and mother. And again, there are two issues. A, you're chayav for that avodah zarah, for its derech, because it was done in the manner, even though not with the same subjects. And B, moilech's kula, that you're only liable on Yetzer Yerechel, doesn't apply when you took something else and called it moilech. And in that case, you're talking liable with father and mother, so you're liable too. Okay? Rabbi Zir was really happy when he heard this. Sover Meimar, because he thought that Rabbi Pinchas was saying this B'shitas Rabbi Hillel Rabbi. He was saying the name of, like Rabbi Hillel's Rebbe said, they'd be chayav too, like we said on top. And it was also about Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon Yisamis. They also saying according to Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon. Now, I don't understand really why Rabbi Zir was so concerned with what Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon held. We start with passing on like Chachamim. Not Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon, but he was really happy to hear this because he thought that Rabbi Pinchas was saying that even according to Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon, there's a chiyuv of moilech by other avodah zaros. There's a chiyuv of moilech by other avodah zaros. If that comes l'kach, right? So it's a tremendous chiddush by him because we knew all along. We're assuming there is no such thing, right? Or moilech is only for moilech according to Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon. You can't cake something else and call it moilech. You say that on top. So it says the Gemara, Amarle Umabi Yodach. So he asked him. Rabbi Zir came all excited and said, like whom were you saying this? What's in your hand? So he says, I said it according to Rabbanan, not according to Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Zir is just crestfallen. He said, I'm like, well, that's this I needed you for. Because I know according to Rabbanan you can be liable to. That's Rabbi Nasser named Rabbi Yechanan. That was Rabbi Zir, Rabbi Yilo. They all said that. I took according to me that even according to Rabbi Shimon it's shaykh to be chayav too. Well, you're telling me I know already. That was no chiddush. Okay, new issue. I saw the Baal Ov Minayin. How do we know the warning for a Baal Ov? The Al Tifnu El Ovos says, do not turn to Ovos. Kares Menai. How we know that you get excised? The soul turns to overseeing Yidonim. Now it's actually 10:09, right?
Yes.
Yeah, clocks get faster every day. So unless you guys are setting it forward every day, I don't know. I thought about Ominine. Out even though this do not sort of this. Kares Menai. How do you know that you get excised for doing Baal Loiv? The soul which turns to overseeing Yidonim Megomer. Oynish Minayin, it says Koris there. Oynish Minayin knows the death penalty and then the basis. It says a man who won't care about over Yidoni, if they have Yidoni Mosim also, they shall surely be put to death. The Lama, looking at Yidoni decrease. This has more, hey, increases where it lists the 36 things you get Koris for, it doesn't say Yidoni. Or it says Ov. How come? How come Yidoni is not listed? It's also Koris. Because they're all including one lav, I'll even know Ovis of Yidonim. Says over the Yidonim together in the Torah. Do not turn to them. Rabbi Yasif Shem Mishloim said Mishu Lo Below Sasei, and it said here it says Shubah Miklach Hasei, but that makes no sense. They'll change it. She'eno Ba Miklach Maisa. It's a lav she'en Bo Maisa. And for some reason we only mention the creases over there where there's a Maisa. And Ov has a Maisa attached. Yidoni does not. Why? We'll speak about that in a couple of minutes. What the Maisa is by Ov, which doesn't apply to Yidoni. But Ov has a Maisa, Yidoni does. We only list things which have a Maisa. Amr, we said now the Sharater so switches the names. And the Mechamayim doesn't, and you can learn like him, but I'm going to learn Sharater so because it's a little bit easier. And he has Rabbi Yasa make the first statement here. Shenichlu kulam b'kulav echad. And Rabbi Chizkiah making the second statement. Okay? So if that's the case, so the next Gemara flows a little bit smoothly. It's more smoothly. Or Rabbi Zir kum Rabbi Yasa. Rabbi Zir said for Rabbi Yasa, Hachin lo asa misti baranash yidoni b'krisus halat. Nobody will know. Nobody knows that. You said Oini and Yidoni are included together, right? Nobody else knows that. Nobody else is going to know in Krisus that Yidoni is a Koris except you. Because you came to this Chish and Yichlu Blabech. Who else knows that? Says, well, no, everybody knows that. In the Gemara, in the Torah, it's one lav. Over Yidoni. So everybody knows what I'm saying. It's Pashut, like I'm saying. And in other words, we don't have to worry about that's not said explicitly. Everybody knows that Ov includes Yidoni. Okay? Ov, Yidoni. Ov, Yidoni are both together. Okay? Says the Gemara further, Ov, Zup, Zeh, Pitom, HaMedaber, Mishichi. It was, Pitom, HaMedaber, Mishichi. Ov is a certain type of voodoo where you talk out of your armpit. So it's like ventriloquism. So there's no Maisa. It seems that there's no Maisa, right? Okay, we'll come back to that. The Yidoni is Medaber Befiv. A Yidoni is someone who speaks with his mouth. Hare elu b'skila, v'anisha b'em ba'asora. They get stoned. Even though it's lav shem bo Maisa, according to what we said previously, you still get stoned. V'anisha b'em, so if you ask them a question, Hasora, he transgresses the lav. V'dori shalom mesim. Then it says, there's a new category in the Torah called Dori Shalom Mesim. What's a Dori Shalom Mesim? East Tiny, there's those who say, Anisha Bilgugolis. You put a skull on the table, start asking him questions, and the skull answers. Which is a pretty neat trick, right? East Tiny, there's those who say, Hanisha B'schuro, you ask your aver, you ask your genitals. So it's interesting, there's a sub question, whose genitals you're asking the question of. Is it yours or the mace? You have a dead corpse and you're asking questions and that's how you gain the answer. But the pashtus is it's your own. What's the difference between the two procedures? Now, bear in mind the Rambam holds is all hogwash and none of this actually works, right? It's all just illusion and delusion. But the pashtus is that it does work, that the Gemara is really asking this as a real question. What's the difference? If you use a skeleton for this divination, the mace comes up from the ground head first. Shabbos comes up on Shabbos. For a head, and even a commoner can bring up a king. But if you use the male organ, the mace doesn't come up in the normal fashion, it comes up feet first. And the Shabbos doesn't come up on Shabbos. I was thinking just how P remez, why does it come up on Shabbos? Because the whole Ma'ala B'Schura is you're hooking into the tumah of, obviously licentious sexuality. But on Shabbos, the halacha is, right, that there's a mitzvah of oina, right? So on Shabbos, all sexuality has kedusha attached to it. So that's why if you try to use this avenue, the tumah is not there on Shabbos, and that's why it doesn't work to bring up to use this koichos tumah. That's maybe a pshat. But anyway, ein hedgel malos hamel. Also, commoner can't bring up a king. Rabbi Vilna said an amazing thing. We didn't, even though we learned Shmuel, I didn't know about this Yerushalmi. We learned Shmuel. There's the pasuk by the famous case of Shaul bringing up Shmuel from the dead is a raya to saying that you need to use the male organ in order to do it. How so? Because it says my timer. Because it says kismi no li ba'ov. Shaul said to the woman, right, the Balasov, he said, do it for me, v'alino li asher omar alayich. Right? So why is it li twice? So going to Rav Huna, what he's saying is that I know you're a woman, right? So you don't got the right organs for it. So use my organ. So somehow he was saying, use me in order to bring up Shmuel. Okay? So that's why it says li twice in the pasuk. It's a good fine pshat. It's a very cute pshat. Okay? Says the Mar. I said, Mach Mamino. What do you derive from this pasuk? Now, he says he doesn't like the drasha. He says, Amrai says, Mikant Abis Yotin Milin Sagin. Where he wants to say that it doesn't necessarily have to do with the male organ. Rather, it might be something else. So why? Why does he say leave several times? Because he asked her to try several different fashions because she was an expert magician. So whatever way it would work, he said, bring out Shmuel, I must speak to them immediately right now. Okay? So it says, what pasuk teaches us that in fact it's not necessarily contingent on the male organ. It says Vayaka ov me eretz kolech. Like ov, you hear your voice or voice from the ground. So it sounds like it's not necessarily something which has to do with the male organ of the diviner. Okay? Milan Rabbanim B'Sayin Rabbi Yasa. Now, that which Rabbi Yasa said before, that it's a you know what? This makes it difficult. What the Shar Yisrael did before. Shar Yisrael changed the names, but here it seems like it did from this that you can't change the names. So I would have to go back if I had the time and try and figure out the Gemara over again, because here it says Rabbi Yasa is the one who said to Lav Shembo Maisa Yidoni, so that which is like we have in front of us now, but the name switched. Okay, I can't do anything about that right now. Milain Rabbanim B'Sayin Rabbi Yasa. The words of the following words of rabbis are Raya for Rabbi Yasa, who said that Ov has Maisa, even though Yidoni does not. Dam Rabbi Yasa Shem Rabbanim Rabbi Yasa name Rabbanan Mibnei Shehein Mekatrin Le Shedim. It says Ov has a Maisa because part of the Ov ceremony is to do a sacrifice to demons. Okay? Rabbi Hila B'Shem Rabbi Yasa said Mibnei Shenichlu Kul Ma'idei Maisa. Here the name Rabbi Yasa says, oh no, here Shar Yisrael is right. Rabbi Hila and Rabbi Yasa said differently. He said that the reason why they're not listed as one of the 37, as 36 creatures, is separately, not broken out, is because it's included in Ov, since it's in Torah, it's one prohibition. Okay? Let's just go a little bit further, and let's not. Okay, well, it's not gonna.